Before you can start developing Android applications, you really need an Android development environment, or an IDE, Integrated Development Environment. And so let's see if we can find that. Turns out that Google provides a tool called Android Studio. And so let's take a look at that. And in the past, people used a different development environment. Usually people used Eclipse, and there was an ADT plugin. That's the Android Development Toolkit plugin for Eclipse, which added functionality to Eclipse that allowed you to write Java applications and compile them into the format that executes as an application on Android devices. In more recent times, though, Google has started to provide the world with Android Studio, which is a very specialized, specific tool that is geared towards Android application development specifically. So Eclipse is still useful for a lot of different kinds of Java programming, and you can still use it for Android development, but going forward, probably more people are going to be interested in knowing how to use this new tool. So let's take a look at Android Studio. First of all, let's take a look at how to download it. And so there's the big green button that we're going to click on. We're not going to do that just yet. We're going to take a look at the system requirements first of all. But as you can see, this link here is download Android Studio for Windows. It's supported on other platforms, in particular Linux and Mac OS X. But let's take a look at the system requirements here. So as you can see, it does support Windows development environment, Mac OS X, and Linux. And so I'm on a Windows system. Actually, let's just take a look at something else here. Let's take a look at the control panel, and let's take a look at whether this is a 32-bit or a 64-bit system. So as you can see here, that is 8 gigabytes, and it's 64-bit. We'll take a look at the minimum requirements, and it turns out that 8 gigabytes is more than sufficient. But in particular, 64-bit operating system, we'll take a look at, in just a few moments, we'll download the Java development kit that Android Studio requires. And that's not from Google, that's actually from a website hosted by Oracle, who are the current owners of the Java language. But in any case, now we know what kind of a system we're on. And if you're on Linux or a Mac, you'd have to do similar kinds of things to figure out what your environment was. So also 2 gigabytes of RAM, 4 gigabytes RAM recommended, 400 megabyte hard disk, at least 1 gig for Android SDK emulator system images and caches. The resolution should be at least 1280 by 800, so let's just see what we've got here. So that's 1920 by 1080, so we should be good there. And so we also want to download the Java Development Kit, the JDK version number 7. And also, and we'll take a look at that in just a moment. That's what we're going to get that from Oracle in just a few minutes. But this last point here is talking about Intel processor with virtualization technology, VTX, and that's necessary for the Intel-based emulators that Android Studio provides for being able to run your application, not on an actual physical device, but on an emulator for development and testing purposes. So we'll take a look at that a little bit later. But let's look after this requirement here, the JDK. And so I'm just going to see if I can find that. Whoops, JDK. And we see there's a JDK 8 and a 7, and they said 7. And actually, I believe the JDK Development Kit 7 came out in 2011. Right now, as I'm recording, it's the summer of 2015, so that's pretty old. But there's not a huge difference between the two. As far as I recall, the only major difference, there are a few other differences of course, but the main one is the addition of lambda expression syntax to the Java language. And although they recommend 7, I'm going to go with 8. I've actually used the JDK 8 with Android Studio quite often, and I have not had any problems with it. If you want to be a little bit on the cautious side, go with the 7. But I'm going to bring down 8 because I'll probably want to use that within Eclipse for other demonstrations that I'm going to be doing in other courses that have to do with Java programming and so on. So let's go with Java SE Development Kit 8. And by the way, SE stands for Standard Edition. You don't want J2EE, which is Enterprise Edition. That has a lot more extra baggage that's not of use to us here. And If you take a look here in this section, this is the SDK, the JDK 8 for Linux, Solaris, Mac OS X, and 32 and 64-bit Windows. Now before you click on any of these links, you have to click on the radio button to accept the license first of all. And I'm going to bring down this exe right here, and we could run it or we could save it. It doesn't much matter really what we do here, but I'm going to save it, and the desktop is kind of a strange place to put this sort of thing, but I'm just going to put it there as a visual reminder that I've got it, and just to make it clear to you that it is being downloaded. You'll see that appear on the desktop in just a bit. So I'm going to save that, and that's going to bring down that exe, and when it does, I'm going to run it, and that will install the JDK 8. Now this is going to take a while, so I'm going to pause the recording of the video, and we'll come back a bit later. Okay, good. Looks like it's done. So let's close that, and let's run this exe. And this could take a while too, so I'm going to pause recording just for a bit, and I'll be back in a little while. Okay, so it looks like it's ready to put it into the destination folder, and it's going to go into Program Files, Java, JRE 1.8.0_45. Click on Next, and I'm going to pause a bit now again. And now it says that it is complete, so we'll close that. So let's see what just got created here. And so it looks like this is the Java runtime environment folder, and this is the JDK folder. And we won't actually be using these tools directly, but this is the Java C compiler. That's the Java runtime interpreter. There's a jar signer and a jar archiver and a compiler and a document tool and so on. Turns out that we're not going to be using any of these in Android development because we need either the Eclipse ADT plugin or the Android Studio to compile it into a different format. The format that this Java C compiler produces runs in a standard Java runtime interpreter, a JRE, but on Android it either runs as a .dex file, that's a Dalvik executable, or more recently Android applications compile down to something called ART. We'll probably talk a bit more about what that is a bit later, but right now we want to get out of here. The main thing is that we have all of the libraries that we need to work with here. Okay, so the next thing we want to do, go back to where we were before and see what's next here. Okay, so we want to click on this link here, download Android Studio for Windows in my case. And I have read this at one point in the past, so I'm not going to do that again, but you should probably take a look through it. And then this link here, download Android Studio for Windows. Let's click on that. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to save this executable, and I'm going to put it on my desktop just where we can see it. And again, this is going to take a while, so I'm going to pause the video recording. I'll come back later. Okay, so it looks like the download has completed. And we see it over here on the desktop. Let's take a look at what their instructions say here. So it says launch the .exe that you've just downloaded and follow the steps in the wizard. And so let's do that. Let's double click on that exe. And we'll go through the wizard. So it's mostly just next, next, I agree, I agree. And here are the paths. So this is the Android Studio installation location, and this is the SDK installation location. So click on Next, Next, and Install. And this might take a while, so I'm going to pause recording and I'll be back in a bit. Okay, so it looks like the installation of Android Studio is complete, so we'll click on Next and then Finish. And it's going to start up Android Studio. Now while that's coming up, maybe we should just take a look at what they're saying here. Yeah, it looks like nothing too important there. So in this next link, adding SDK Packages, we'll do that also. Sometimes people find that when they first start the studio, it does not, there's some problems. And so you should go into the SDK Manager on the toolbar, looks like this little icon here, and run it. And they show over here an image of the SDK Manager. And these little checkboxes are used to indicate what components are installed. And if you see Install and then some number and then Packages, you should probably click on that to bring those down. But let's take a look at what we got over here. So it says you can import your settings from a previous version of the Studio, and I don't have a previous version on this machine, so I'm just going to go with this second radio button. I do not have a previous version, and click on OK. And I'll allow access for the firewall. And I can choose between the standard and the Dracula theme. I'm going to go with the standard one. Click on Next. And this could take a little while, so I'm going to pause recording just for a bit. Okay, it looks like that's now finished, and you will see something interesting here. It says Android Virtual Device Nexus 5 API 22 x86 was created. So we're going to see that we can actually create multiple choices to pick from when we want to run an application within an emulator. And so this one is basically a starting one that's given to us out of the box. But if we need to, we can emulate other devices, other API version numbers, and other CPUs, in particular ARM as opposed to x86. In any case, let's click on Finish here. And let's try this out. Let's see if we can create a new project. By the way, if you have any existing projects that you created with the Eclipse ADT plugin, you can bring them in through this import. You can also import Android code samples from Google's website, and that's a great place to start learning about all kinds of different APIs. But let's, just to make sure that our environment is working, let's create a new simple Android Studio project. And I'm just going to go with the defaults here. I'll probably explain what these things are in more detail at a later time, but let's just click on Next. And so this is going to be phone and tablet, Android 15, ice cream sandwich. Click on Next. Let's just go with a very simple blank activity here. Next. It's going to create an activity name. The class name is going to be main activity. Its layout is going to be in activity_main. It's going to have a title. You can change that if you like. And a menu resource name associated with that application's main menu as well. So you could change those, but I'm just going to leave them. I'm going to click on Finish and see what we get. And this shouldn't take too long, but I am going to pause just in case it... Oh, there it is. Yeah, I'm going to pause. I'll be back in just a minute. Okay, that really didn't take a minute. It was just a few seconds. So here's a firewall rule that we have to allow. And this tip of the day shows up. You can always uncheck it if you don't want to see that. I'll just leave it for now. I'll click on Close. And in a few more seconds, we should see it all loaded up. If we go to the left here and click on Project, we should see what's in it. So here's our application, and here's our Gradle scripts. Gradle is a mechanism for performing automated builds, and you can configure builds and script builds. We won't get into that just now. But within our application, we do see that we have this main activity created. And so this is a Java source code file. I should probably bump up the font later on when we take a look at code in more detail, but for now we're not looking at the details. And so there's the main activity, and there's also a unit test for testing that activity. And there's also a layout resource here, activity_main.xml, menu, a map folder, and some resources for dimensions and strings and styles. There's also the Android manifest, which we'll talk about more detail later. In any case, this activity main.xml, you'll see that there's a rendering problem, and so if we click on this, it'll do a rebuild. Sometimes it just needs to do a build to get things all sorted out. So let's click on that. Okay, so that rendering has been fixed, and we'll take a look at these various toolbars and various other panels that are showing up here a bit later. But for now, I just wanted to show you that up here there's a toolbar. That's the AVD Manager. And so that's that one Nexus 5 API 22 x86 that we saw that we got free out of the box. You can also create new devices here. We'll do that at another time. You can run the emulator here, and then you can go back into your application and execute it on that device. And you can create other devices as well. I should probably also show you another really useful tool called Genymotion. Let's not do that just now, but that's another tool that you might want to download and install because it has some really good emulators that are faster and more flexible and functional. But if we take a look at right over here, this is the SDK Manager. And so these various checkboxes, these are the parts that have been downloaded. One of the things we're going to have to install is this Intel x86 emulator. So I'm going to check that checkbox. The reason we're going to need that is because that emulator takes advantage of virtualization technology built into the Intel microprocessor, or at least most modern Intel microprocessors. And by the way, if you have an older machine, that might cause you problems. But we want to install that, so I checked that checkbox, and there's also a number of others that have yet to be installed, and you see over here this button, Install 17 Packages. So I'm going to click on that and accept the license and click on Install. And this could take a while, so I'm going to stop recording video for a bit. Okay folks, so just to let you know, I've muted my mic for quite a few minutes, and I'm only about halfway through, as you can see this blue bar here. So don't be surprised if these packages take quite a while. Anyways, I'm going to stop recording for a bit and I'll come back once this is all finished. By the way, I just resumed recording a bit. I noticed there is a download interrupted error here. That's not a big deal. I'm just going to close that. If for any reason any of these fail, you just run it again and it's going to pick up the ones that were missed. But anyways, I'm going to pause recording and I'll come back in just a bit. Okay, so it looks like that completed, and again we're back here, and now it says install 9 packages, and you might be wondering, well, why did we just install a whole bunch of packages and now it's coming back and telling us that we need more? You might think that it should just be able to do all of the ones that it needs in one shot, but it turns out that for a few reasons, it could be network errors or timeouts, although that's probably not that common a cause of problems with installing packages. More often it is an issue where you want one package but you can't get it because it's dependent on some other package that doesn't exist yet, and so there's a sequencing to some of these things. So it can be a bit iterative, which just means that you have to click on Install Packages again, and hopefully this will be the last one, but if not, then we can do it again. Eventually it'll settle down to get all the packages that you need based on what you're currently working with. By the way, if you're wondering what all these things are, we have the SDK tools and the preview for the next version of Android, Android M, API 22, and then further down Android 5.1, and then older and older, and you see that these are unchecked. So if I wanted to check some of these boxes, that would allow me to target older devices. And then at the very bottom are extras, which are accessing web services and additional features and extensions and so on. So under extras, for example, we have Google Play services. So in any case, the HAXM, which is the Intel accelerator for the emulator, That's still not installed. So that is checked. So let's go back and click on this install one more time and see if that does it. Okay, so I'm going to stop recording for a bit and I'll be back in a little while. Okay, so one more round. Looks like install 8 packages again. So let's try one more time. Eventually it'll all get sorted out. I'm going to pause recording again for a bit. I'll be back in a bit. Okay, looks like we're down to one package. Let's click on it one more time and see if we're done. And this should go fairly quickly. But I might pause just for, well, actually, yeah, it looks like it's now done. So the HAXM is installed. Okay, so now that we're done with that, let's try running this. And we might get an error here. So this is ADB. That's the Android Debug Bridge. That's used to communicate between the Android Studio environment and the emulator. Or in some cases, you might connect it up via USB to an actual device. So you can see down here, Gradle is executing tasks. That's the build environment. And so I could choose a running device if I had one connected, but I don't have any, so this is empty. We only have this one emulator listed, and that's the one we saw that we got out of the box for free when we installed Android Studio. I could go and create others, but let's just go and test this out and click on OK. Now, this emulator is not the fastest in the world. We'll probably want to install Genymotion, which is a lot quicker to work with. But as you can see, the emulator is running Nexus 5 API 22 x86. I'm actually going to stop recording for a bit because this might take just a bit of time to come up. And we see HAX is working and emulator is running in fast virtual mode. Now if you get an error that says that HAX is not available, then you're going to have to check to see if your system supports the Intel accelerator. And actually Intel provides a utility that can verify the existence or support for that feature, and if it does support it, you may find that you have to go to, you'll have to probably search for this, but Intel has a little exe that you can download to set it up if it's not already set up. Looks like mine is already set up and we can see it over here. Now it's a little bit large for the screen. We'll talk a little bit later about how we can make adjustments to that sort of thing, but this is the Android device, and if you hit Alt-Space to bring up that menu, and then you can move with the arrow keys. That's not the most convenient way to work with this, but you have to do that if the title bar is off the screen. In any case, let's unlock the screen. We should see the application come up, and there it is. It says Hello World. And if you take a look at the source code for this, well, we'll talk about more details on how this is implemented, but that will actually be a string that's displayed within the user interface. And so now we've completed the installation of our development environment, and we've tried running it on an emulator.